Hello, all, and welcome to the newest episode of the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. I'm Austin. I'm a knockout. I've watched a lot of wrestling.
I'm David. I'm a noob. I've watched some wrestling. Some could say I could watch more wrestling. I am open to any arguments in favor of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the best argument for more wrestling would be tonight's episode as we return to Boyle Heights, California, to the world's weirdest wrestling fight club, Lucha Underground.
Oh, thank Christ.
Yes, last time we met, which 2 weeks ago, we went to the New Generation era. That was fun for nobody.
That was painful. I just look back at that and I'm like, oh no.
Yes, we are back. David had to miss last week, so I filmed a bonus episode of me playing a wrestling choose your own adventure game. That's out now. You should check that out if you haven't.
You should definitely check that out.
But yeah, tonight we are going to cover the next episode of Lucha Underground. And this intro should be very fast because what do I have to talk about? Kind of nothing. Because this episode is the next episode after Aztec Warfare. This is a follow-up, by the way, to episode 9, Aztec Warfare. You want to check that out. And that episode was very kind of like, everything kind of feels self-contained in that episode. This is kind of like a new start of like new stuff now that we have our champion, the one and only Prince Puma.
Yes. Long may he reign.
Yeah, so they didn't announce any, because it was the only thing on the last show. They didn't like advertise anything for me to like talk about what we're going to see. I mean, I know what the matches are because I've seen them online, but that would be no fun to like spoil it if the TV show didn't.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't really have anything to talk about in terms of, like, what we're going to see tonight, because there's nothing really advertised, and there's no storylines, I think, that need to be, like, we got to make sure we understand where everything is.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is directly following up. We're just kind of ready to go.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just say that Aztec Warfare, really fun match.
Oh, God. Please go listen to episode 9. Like this is one where I definitely implore that you listen to the previous episode, because Aztec Warfare was a fantastic time. There's a lot of ground to cover in Aztec Warfare, and just we spent the entire back half gushing about how fucking awesome Aztec Warfare is.
Absolutely. If you watch, you should definitely go back and watch that episode. And I will say that if you're gonna watch like one episode of Lucha Underground to see if you like it, watch Aztec Warfare.
Yeah, no, please. Oh God. Yeah, that's just like a good, I think that's just a good intro to professional wrestling in general, is like, this is like the peak of what it can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tonight is kind of like okay, we've had our Aztec Warfare. Where do we go from here? And hopefully tonight we're going to be able to cover 2 episodes, because this season is 39 episodes long. I would like to do more than 1 episode every month.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, so with that in mind, well, I got nothing else to really talk about here. So see you guys in the back half, I guess.
This is the back whole show.
This is a sub 4 minute front half.
Dang, I'm excited.
See you guys when we're done.
Yeah, it's going to be lots to talk about.
And we're back. We have just finished watching Lucha Underground Season 1, Episodes 10 and 11.
That was a lot. I want to clarify off the bat. A lot. A really good a lot.
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of things to go on. I'm glad I chose to do 2 episodes when I did. Because I think episode 10 was very much a bit of like a reset kind of an episode.
I agree.
There was not nearly as many story beats as there was in episode 11.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of good fighting, but not a whole lot to like really analyze. Compared with episode 11, there's a decent amount. And I mean, even the main thing, we flipped so much on this show back and forth between like if we talk about like main event first or last, but like in this case, since it is kind of like the main thing to analyze, like the big one is main event for was it main event for both Drago versus
No. That was the main event of the 11, so that was the last thing we watched. So
yeah,
I mean, about that.
The big one that kind of carries over between the 2 episodes is we have Drago versus King Cuerno, which, if you recall from our discussion episode 9, King Cuerno being kind of like this big game hunter, kind of think like the luchador equivalent of like Craven almost, in kind of the way he presents himself. And Drago is just like a dragon who turned himself mostly human.
And so Cuerno's like, you know what I should hunt?
Yeah,
the Dragon Man.
And it's not as silly as it sounds. Funny enough,
No,
he actually looks cool, and it doesn't feel. I said this a lot. Like I said this at another point during the episode too. What I really admire about Lucha Underground is their ability to take these kind of like out there concepts and make them not even feel hokey. Like early on when we talked about Lucha Underground, I was very much into like it. These ideas are hokey, but they're presented in a fun way. But now I'm kind of like it's not even hokey. I take this like decently seriously. They do a good job at kind of subbing in the archetype for the like literal idea, you know.
Yeah, they managed to make it seem serious enough that you want to buy into it being serious. It for concepts that you like you on paper, like there's no way that you take that completely seriously.
Yeah, exactly. There's something that's so later. Sorry. There's something about the just the way they and it's kind of a combination of things. It's I think more than anything off the top, it's very much the production design. They do a very good job at, I don't know even what it is, but they do a very good job designing costume, designing set, making it all feel God, I hate saying like gritty and realistic because it's such a meme, but that's kind of what it is. They do a good job at making that the design elements feel grounded. And on top of that, I kind of think the lack of like direct promo cutting kind of helps in their favor too.
Yeah, no one has to be out. No one has to be out there like Drago doesn't have to like do interviews where he talks about being a dragon. He just lets the name and appearance do it for him. They gave him the one vignette where they explain the history of dragons.
Yeah.
But after that, they like don't keep putting it into your head and reminding you of his kind of silly backstory.
They seem like they trust their audience very much to understand like nonverbal storytelling. And I appreciate that on a number of levels. And again, here it's very effective. So much is communicated between just kind of how Drago and King Cuerno look at each other, how they interact with each other, how they fight with each other, the sort of brutalism about it all. And on top of that, it's very much presented in this very straightforward way. There's not a whole lot of contrivance to it. We understand the basic concept of what's going on and why, and all the rest is left up to the fighting. And for as simplistic as it is, it's deeply affecting.
Yeah, Cuerno has a real presence about him, I think.
Terrifying!
Like he is so dead set focused on Drago at all times, like you would be if you were this like hunter.
Yeah, no.
Who's stalking his prey as he sees it.
He's got this great like kind of sustained intensity about him that never feels forced. He just has those vibes about him, and it works very much in his favor, obviously. And it then really makes you like it again, without saying too many words, it makes him a really effective heel. And it makes you really feel for Drago as he's just kind of slowly overpowered by this dude. Like even in the first episode where we have a tie that, as far as I could tell, was brought about by Drago kind of redeeming himself toward the end and being able to be dominant enough to not get felled by this dude. It even in those instances, it feels like he's just barely making it out of those scrapes.
Yeah. So what happens is that in their first match, Cuerno brings out a table with the intention of putting Drago through that table. And the tables are managed to turn. And Drago does the first of what we got to see of a very classic Lucha Underground spot of they run up. For people who don't understand, is that in the ring, is that you have the ring, and to the side of the ring, you have Dario Cueto's office. and it's this little building that you can climb on top of, and people love like climbing on top of that thing and jumping off of it.
Yeah.
And that is what Drago does. He jumps off the roof of the office and puts Cuerno through the table, but in doing so, he knocks himself out too, and the match kind of ends in like, well, they're both knocked out, so that's a draw.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see stuff like that. So something else I've noted very much throughout our watching of these things is Lucha does a great job at giving us varied visuals. Every episode we've watched, I've been consistently surprised by several kind of like tableaus they've put in there. Like I mentioned to Austin a lot when we were watching. Each kind of like pin feels like a very distinct look to it. And again, we have things like Drago climbing the office, which is not a thing you see in like really any other wrestling shows. I mean, the costume design also helps too, and just like these people look different. We also have like the styles in which people fight feel varied. I mean, part of that is because this is like, you know, high flying, and we don't get a whole lot of that here in America. But we also have characters like Pimpinella who have this very distinct way of moving. It's all just, they do a great job at not letting things ever feel samey, and I think that lends so much to why like this is so deeply enjoyable.
Oh yeah, Lucha Underground is nothing quite like anything we have in American wrestling. It's very much, I think it's very friendly to American wrestling stylistically, but with a lot of infusions of Lucha Libre to create something very unique and interesting.
Yeah, no. And that's what's really cool about it too is it's cool, and it's also kind of funny, like the blend of cultures we get. And this shows up in like in a number of ways. We have things that I kind of find more comical, like like we'll get the announcer giving like the authentic like accent pronunciation of somebody's name, and then we get the American announcers repeating it back, and they just totally butcher it.
Yeah.
But also kind of like the bilingual nature of the show, and how it how do I say this? Like, it doesn't like it feels like it does a good job, and obviously I can only speak to this from like one side of the culture equation. It feels like it does a very good job at like not making it feel foreign to anybody who's watching it. Like, there's not like a zillion like cultural markers of straight up America or straight up like Latin America that that are going to just like have, you know, whoever's not from that one place scratching their head. It again, the straightforward nature of the show. They don't get caught up in a whole lot of stuff. They're there to fight, and they present their stories in a you know, bilingual manner, and that's about all we need.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So, and kind of come back to where Drago and King Cuerno, which is the only, they fight twice. They fight in each episode. And they get a follow-up in what is called a last man standing match. I'm sure I've referenced at some point on here, but just to be safe, is that it's basically a match where instead of the goal where you pin your opponent, your goal is to basically knock them out to the point that they cannot answer a 10 count. And I complained to David about this when we watched it. And I'm not saying the match wasn't bad, but my biggest problem with last man standing matches is that by nature of how the match works, it lends itself to kind of a very slow pace of like, all right, you hit a big move, and then you're waiting close to 10 seconds for the other guy to get up.
Yeah.
And then you're going to hit another, and then until somebody hits another big move, and then you wait. Because it's not advantageous to like keep the pace up and chain moves together the way you'd see in a traditional match, because, you know, you want to win the match as soon as you can. So, you know, you're going to hit a move and like, well, is that enough?
Yeah.
You're not going to try to do something else until you know it isn't.
I'm kind of two minds about this subject, because on one hand, we have exactly the complaint you had, where I was kind of watching it and it kind of drags it out, and I'm like, okay, come on, like there were so many false endings, and I'm like, oh nope, we're still going. Okay,
we're going.
But at the same time, for at least for this match, I'm sure like it's on a very case by case basis. But for this match specifically, it did kind of lend to the tension and the brutality of the match to just have it kind of keep chugging on and just watch Drago slowly get overpowered.
I think that like the intensity and the skill of Cuerno and Drago helps a lot to kind of make those slower periods feel a little more interesting. But yeah, it has issues of dragging, I think, until kind of like the end when they're starting to kind of get through one of their biggest moves to reach the conclusion, which was kind of I think a very fun kind of way to end the match. At first, you have Cuerno brings the table out again to kind of prove that he can do this correctly, and they even fake you out and make you think he's going to fail again. But then he succeeds, but it's not enough. Drago gets back up again, and so Cuerno's next solution is, what if I just tie Drago up onto the ground, so he can't get up?
Yeah. Which, again, a thing you don't really see a whole lot in these things. So, again, it just varies it up and makes it memorable.
I've seen it. I've seen exactly like one time. I can think of one other match where they've tried something like that.
Yeah.
John Cena and Batista had a match where John Cena taped Batista's legs together. for the same purpose of like. I mean,
but even then, those are kind of like distinct aesthetics from each other, like tape versus like cord rope.
Yeah, no, he wraps it around. He wraps it very loosely around his neck and his mouth, and also he doesn't just leave it be. Like he like yanks the ropes while Drago's getting counted down.
He pulls. Yeah, no. And again, the brutalism is definitely starting to show. The amount of times you watch Drago kind of get slammed toward the end of that episode, you do kind of start to, at least I did, kind of start to sympathetically feel it almost in my, like, deep in me, like, damn, this is just like over and over. And kind of segueing off that, Austin was talking about, like, this is a show that starts to kind of get really brutal in the violence it depicts, and we had another great example of that. With a cigar to the eye.
Oh Lord, yeah. I'm sure if I had taken the time to really remember things, I would have remembered this, because Big Rick has gets an eye patch, and he like wears that the rest of the show.
Oh no!
And like I would have remembered that at some point if I really tried, but I didn't remember that this happened at this point in the show. But okay, so start of episode 11, his crew, Mr. Cisco and Cortez Castro. That's it. They have a match with Pimpinella Escarlata and Masquerita Sagrada, which is kind of fun. Which is a fun match.
I love it.
Yeah, they're you have some fun characters, but it's mostly there to kind of be like, look how like strong the crew are.
I know.
Cisco and Cortez, and then Rick comes down to kind of be like, mack it up and kind of be and emphasize that that he's in charge here. But ho ho ho, how the turntables, because the Cisco, Cortez, and Bale all betray Big Rick and beat him down, and eventually Big Rick has a signature cigar that he kind of carries around with him and smokes in the middle of the show. Cisco grabs the cigar and just burns his eye.
Yeah. Oh Jesus. Which just it was this great shock moment, because it came out of nowhere. Like, you don't realize, like, you don't think like they're gonna like betray each other or anything.
Yeah. No. Like, and then later it's revealed this is all kind of a Dario plot.
Yeah.
To get Big Rick out of the way.
And of course he makes a bad pun about it.
Yeah, no, he's like, Big Rick couldn't see how great of a partnership him and me could have had, but now he's not seeing much of anything.
God. Again, Dario continues to be this great, like, ultimate bastard character.
No. Yeah, so he like paid off all of Rick's minions to betray him.
Yeah.
And turns
the power of money.
Yeah, and it turns Rick into a sympathetic character, which is interesting after he was kind of the first major established villain of the show.
Wait, does he turn face for this?
I don't remember quite, like, I don't remember, like, how much of a face he becomes over this.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
But like this is definitely like for a character for the first 10 episodes is very much kind of like a quasi final, more of a mid boss, I guess, and a final boss.
Yeah.
Because
card boss.
He was a final boss, and then like Mel Muertes showed up, and so he's like, oh, I guess you're a mid boss now.
Yeah.
But like he's still kind of like he was kind of been portrayed as kind of a monstrous figure to deal with and dominant figure, and now like he's now he's getting sympathy.
Exactly.
For this brutal beatdown.
It's definitely like a pretty easy sympathy point to kind of carry with you.
Yeah.
But again, interesting they do it on Big Rick of all people.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Oh.
I see. And yeah, Dario's was making some plays this episode. Gonna kind of segue that into to the main event of the first episode, which was because in this episode Dario's all like, hey, I have outsmarted you with money. But in the first episode,
I just realized Dario's a like much more compelling Ted DiBiase.
Kinda, because DiBiase was almost a little too focused on the money aspect of it, I think.
Yeah, I mean Dario does that too, but not like to the same cringy.
No, there's more dimensions to Dario than there is to Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, in the first episode, Dario Cueto shows up to also cause some trouble because his partnership with Conan from previous episodes is kind of dissolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, well, I don't really like that Conan's boy is the champion, so I'm gonna talk up Ray Phoenix. Be like, hey, you beat Prince Puma, so you should be the first man to challenge for Puma's title. So he's immediately pitting Prince Puma against a pretty top challenger, all things considered.
And I really like that. It's not played as like Phoenix is turning like evil sinister on Puma like immediately. Like it's just like, oh, boss man has a challenge for me. I'm gonna rise to the occasion.
Yeah, because once Dario starts kind of he tries to make it a little more overt of an idea of like, hey, we could be great together, and he's like, no, I fight for me. I'm not fighting for you. I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
I will say it was nice that I was able to like pretty much understand the entirety of his speech, like even without closed captions.
Yeah, because Ray Phoenix spoke in Spanish as part of the show being bilingual, which is it's something I always really appreciate about the show is that like they weren't for a show that airs on admittedly El Rey network, but it is still an English language channel that they were not afraid to have people who are not as comfortable speaking English or are not fluent in English at all, like Pentagon Jr, for example.
Yeah,
allowing them to still like. If it makes sense for the moment to cut a promo in Spanish and they just they subtitle it, I always appreciated that they didn't try to make them did speak English or not let them talk at all if they couldn't.
Yeah, no, it feels respectful, and I kind of hate to say this because it feels like such like a brand thing to build. It feels like authentic too, like it doesn't feel like for it's funny because as clearly like this is the most fake of all the wrestling shows in a way, but none of it feels forced to me, at least not so far, which is I think a really great testament to the strength of its writing and the strength of its presentation. None of this feels like particularly hokey or forced, despite the fact that literally all the backstage segments have the same friggin' cinematography as a soap opera.
Yeah, and all the characters are bonkers.
Yeah, or at least most of the characters.
Well, a lot of the characters are like insane things for a wrestling show.
Yeah, these. I mean, more. this day and age, more more companies kind of pick up on those sort of things. You have characters like Chris Statlander in AEW, who's supposed to be an alien, but like either way, it's just nice how everything is done in a way that they don't push in any direction other than just we want to tell a good story. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of like weird shit behind it, unlike the vibes you get from your WWEs of the world. Which like the thing I kind of like think about is like I wonder how much of like my deep enjoyment of something like Lucha is colored by like the most dominant wrestling company being the kind of most like problematic and like inconsistent in its quality, and then I turn on something like AEW or Lucha, which is really really consistent, and it's just really nice. It feels so much nicer, and I wonder how much of that is like the fact that it really is exceptional, and how much of it is like, God, this is such a nice breath of fresh air. But
I mean, yeah,
it's a really nice breath of fresh air.
I mean, I think that's a very fair idea. Is that, is part of the problem of WWE, even in a historic, like, they've been around for so long, and there are so many hours that like it's just so it is a lot more hit and miss in a lot of ways than something like AEW in its short history and Lucha Underground in its short history were generally more consistent, I think. And they're not the only ones I could name off that I think like, oh, there's a lot greater consistency there. But I think Lucha Underground's consistent quality helps a lot because it helps you, I think, stay invested in stuff.
Yeah, and also like the shortness of the episodes. After watching and I might have said this in past Lucha episodes, but after watching some like shorter like WWF episodes and having them feel like so much nothing, how much they're able to cram into what, like 45 minutes to an hour.
It would have aired over an hour, but of course if you take commercials out, it's only
45 minutes. Yeah, and how much they're able to cram into those like 45-minute spaces. Without it ever feeling like overstuffed or anything. I don't know how they pull that off. Aside from, again, the fact that they're just focused on having good matches a lot more than like, cutting the promos.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I think that it's the fact that they don't have time. They don't even have time to like have these lengthy like promo bits. I think helps a lot in pacing.
Yeah.
Because I think the closest thing we get to that in this episode is in episode 10, we get the Chavo Guerrero Blue Demon kind of like finale to this whole little feud. Like episode 9 has the catharsis of Blue Demon Jr. coming back. And then this episode is very much a final sticking point to the whole thing. Where Chavo Guerrero sets up in the ring and he's like, I want to apologize to Blue Demon Jr.
Yeah.
Shockingly, his apology isn't authentic. Yeah. And I made fun of it when we watched it, and I can't help it. I'm sorry, but it's just a very overused trope of wrestling when the heel.
I mean, that's a fair thing to make fun of, though.
Like that, like it's a very overused trope in wrestling of heels being like, I want to apologize, and then they like finish the sentence and it's something stupid.
I'm sorry I didn't destroy you sooner.
Yeah, basically. It's like, I'm sorry. He goes like, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry I didn't rip your mask off.
Yeah. Like, Jesus Christ.
It's like, bro. And I appreciate that Blue Demon Jr. wasn't an idiot about it, where he shows up, but he spends the whole time being like very suspicious. And then when Chavo decides to like go full mask off about it, Blue Demon but Blue Demon is able to just like see it coming and kick his ass, and that's that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome overall.
I mean, honestly, the one I found to be longer than that was the Cage interview.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, and I think it's because Cage is the most comfortable in terms of like projecting himself in that way, in that kind of a setting. So it was
It's funny because well, it's funny too because like that was the most underwhelming part of the 2 episodes was just like Cage giving this like kind of milquetoast like, yeah, I'm gonna kick some ass interview where like he doesn't really present a character. It like I said this to you when we were watching, but like the in-ring persona versus like the guy we see interviewing feel like 2 very different people. Because in-ring, big bulky dude who's like glaring all the time and like staring down at you and just ready to like pummel you. But like when he's in an interview, he's like really calm and he's talking with like, you know, the kind of like folksy whatever to his mannerisms and not all that deep a voice, not all that intense a thing. Like, and I don't even want that over the top of character. I just want it to match, you know?
Yeah, like, and I guess we should explain. So, like, at the start of the first episode we watched, episode 10, is that we have a 4-way match to introduce 4 new characters, which are Aerostar, Argenis, and Helico, and Cage. And the match is really there to like, it's there to give all of them a little bit of shine, but at the end of the day, it's about Cage because Cage beats all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And he's there to kind of be presented as like, oh man, look at this guy.
This guy, right?
This guy who the roidiest of Magoos. And like we'll see a lot more when we actually get to see Cage. We see Cage, but one of Cage's kind of most insane things is he looks like the kind of guy who Hulk Hogan would have fought in the 80s, but he moves he's as agile as anybody in Lucha Underground, despite looking like an absolute tank.
I mean, that's just kind of to be expected in Lucha Underground for me at this point. Like even the big bulky dudes are agile as hell.
Yeah. And so he wins the match, and then he shows up after the main event of episode 10, which is a Phoenix and Prince Puma, which Puma wins, and he just shows up and just beats the fuck out of Prince Puma.
It's just bad. Like Puma gets his ass whooped.
No, he's destroyed. And the message, of course, is clear that I would like a shot at the title, please.
Yeah. I wonder what nefarious end Dario's going to use that.
Yeah, Dario doesn't have any explicit connection to Cage at this point, but I mean, you know, very convenient timing for Cage to just show up after Prince Puma won the championship.
And Dario still has stacks of money that he can just throw around at whatever person he wants to bribe.
Mm-hmm. But then that's what led into the sit-down interview in episode 11 where they're like, all right, Cage, what are you all about here, man? Because you just kind of destroyed our champion.
And he's like, all right, you know, I'm just kind of here to kick some ass, and I kicked his ass, and there we go.
No, but the best part was my joke is that so every time he's not introduced as Cage, even though that is his name. They always go, they call him Cage. Yeah. And he gives an explanation for that, which is they call him Cage because people realize that he's not a man, he's a machine. Get used to that, by the way. Get used to he's not a man, he's a machine. But then I was like, a cage isn't a machine. No.
It's like you can have like mechanized cages, but like inherently, like that's not the default.
No, and you don't think of a cage when you think machine.
No, yeah. Again, the wrestling hokiness. Even Lucha can't help but have some like dumb words sometimes.
Nah, but like that was funny to me. Of like, Cage isn't a machine. Why? Yeah. Why did people go? Why did when people realized that you were a machine, they start calling you Cage?
Why didn't they? I mean, I don't even know like what else to call. Like what else? Like. I guess robot would be a good one, but like that doesn't feel very.
No, I don't weird. Know. That feels that if this was a show that wanted to play that more explicitly of him being like literally a robot.
Yeah, but I mean, If anyone could pull it off, it'd be Lucha. But
Yeah, but spoiler warning, they don't play him off as like literally an android of some sort.
no, he just big dude.
He's just a big dude who is a machine, metaphorically.
Large man. Humongous. Yeah, no. I mean, that's fine. A little bit of a flop in an otherwise great set of episodes. Like, yeah, whatever. Like,
Yeah,
it was boring for a few minutes. It's fine. We still had funny things to laugh about. Austin had a great line, you know. But all the rest, like, I mean, even his fight too, like that first fight in episode 10.
it was a good match, and
it was a good match, even with like no context for who these people are. It worked. Like it was great. They all kind of like had these great styles that were all distinct and all played off each other really well. Really impressive work from all of them. A particular standout to me was Angelico.
Yes, Angelico, Mr. Neon, dude, Neon Green.
Neon Green. He's like flopping around everywhere. He's got this very kind of like I've described other wrestlers this way too, but like he's got this really rubbery wave, kind of like bouncing around the ring. Additionally, he sells really well. Like whenever he gets knocked down, he just goes for it, and it's really hammy and over the top, but it also doesn't like feel that fake. Like he just sells well, and he just happens to sell in a very over the top way, but it doesn't make it feel bad, which is cool. So I especially enjoyed watching him.
Yeah,
he was a fave of mine of that kind of like foursome.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess go chronologically. We go from here. We covered most episode 10 because, as I said, it was a very thin episode overall, in which that's fine. You know, not every episode can be like, wow, holy shit! Like there's
but again,
like 30
all
things
solid
we got to talk about. Yeah, it wasn't like it was bad or boring or anything. It's just kind of it was just kind of like all right, take a breath. We just did Aztec Warfare. Let's slow our roll for 1 week.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have efficiency in your writing.
Mm-hmm. And like the big thing was the big thing was Phoenix and Prince Puma, which was a really solid match.
Again, yeah, really well done. I mean, they've already established themselves as really good fighters. There were just great moments overall. There was a moment that I didn't like pick up on it, but Austin did of Puma missed the opportunity to do something. And Austin made the comment about oh, he's gonna get crap for that later. And I thought about that for a second. I'm like, yeah, that is the sort of thing for
Conan
to give him shit for. And I could foresee that being a backstage segment where he's like, what the hell were you doing? Get your head, sort of that sort of thing. And again, a really great example of how you take how with not a whole lot of talking. Very subtextual, very physical, very, very much kind of like you have to be paying attention to kind of what's going on around everything. A great example of how simple, straightforward in-ring stuff can feel very effective to kind of the backstage A-plot.
Yeah, and basically the story, it kind of fed into like the overarching story. Like the spot I'm specifically mentioning is that like Puma was going up for a 450 for his signature move, the 450 splash, and Ray Phoenix was rolling away from where he would land. Was rolling towards Puma, so he would be unable. So Puma would miss, and like Puma has like no sense of awareness that this is happening, because he's busy. He's focused getting up on the top rope, so he's not really looking at Phoenix. And so Phoenix is able to kind of get out of the way without Puma noticing that. And so Puma does the move, and there's nobody there, and he just lands.
Yeah.
And that's when the Mario's like, man, you gotta have Conan's gonna get at you for not having better awareness.
Yeah,
Like Phoenix is moving, you got to adjust and do something else.
This show is really good at establishing ideas that you can just kind of tell are going to pay off later. Like this, the victory, Puma not being felled by this first challenger that Dario throws at him. that just makes the stakes even greater for the next time. And I mean, even Big Rick coming in, or no, not Big Rick, Cage coming in, and Cage coming in and like beating up on him. Even though we see like him getting knocked down during this match, it's still like that still sets up like, oh damn, this is going to be a challenger for the future, and he's going to be a tough one to surmount because he's going to probably be like one-on-one with him. Those stakes feel set up. Between episodes 10 and 11, the Cuerno versus Drago thing feels very much like set up and payoff. The Big Rick thing's gonna come back. Just a whole lot of really good, and you felt other things paying off from earlier episodes too. I mean, Sexy Star's arc just continues to kind of like span, and with each one, that kind of like thing for fighting for respect in this world. It's that's been carried over from like her very first appearance, and as far as I remember, the very first episode.
Yeah.
The through line here is so consistently maintained. It's impressive, and it's satisfying, deeply satisfying to watch play out.
Yeah, these episodes kind of had a lot of like matches between guys who are kind of jobbers and people who are not. Yeah. And I think that works for kind of being able to like establish some characters is kind of like important to pay attention to. Sexy Star being one, and getting a match with El Mariachi Loco.
Which I want to give so much credit to, because great match to watch. It's Lucha, so of course it is. But also something I pointed out to you while we were watching. For some reason they had like Mariachi Loco like aggressively macking on Sexy Star, like borderline sexual assault.
He was doing some unwarranted gyrations.
Yeah, it was, but the narrative never really was like, it's cute, it's flattering, like, boys will be boys. It never did that.
Like, nah,
it kind of kept Sexy in a such a silly name to say along with the sentence, but like it kept Sexy in this great like sense of empowerment throughout the whole thing. Of the focus is never on like the potential eroticism of her getting skeeved on by this dude, but instead, like, it just kept going like, no, treat this woman with respect, and that's what the narrative said to us, again, without them ever turning to the camera and with a mic in their hands and saying, this is the moral of the story. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and like thankfully they don't really like do that the whole match. It's very much a bit of an early match thing to kind of establish.
That's also true. It didn't drag on.
It was kind of there to establish Mariachi Loco as kind of a cleared like villain here, but like once stuff got serious, he stopped doing it too, and it was a lot more of a bit of a serious encounter. And I appreciated that because I didn't really need it to continue on.
And I love what they said too, because in like her very first promo, Sexy Star was talking about like, I faced a lot of trials and tribulations in my life, a lot of them coming from my gender, and so by kind of embarking on this journey with Lucha Underground, it is my desire to be an example to like girls everywhere that you can rise above the crap that you get and be like me, a sexy star.
Yes.
But then at the end of the match, when she rose triumphant, the announcers made an explicit point to say, she's an example for men, or for women, men, girls, boys, everyone, everywhere. And I'm like, oh dang, they're not making this just like only girls can look up to girl fighters. Like, no, they're unisexing. That's great. That's super cool.
Yeah, and Lucha, and I like Sexy Star she's very much like the heart of Lucha Underground.
Oh my God.
In terms of her like motivation and drive and like who she is.
Yeah, even more than Puma, I feel like.
Puma's the hometown boy and kind of the top guy, but like Sexy Star is the heart of it all.
Yeah, no, he like Puma's kind of like the main protagonist, but Sexy Star is kind of like this great secondary lead who just has just as so far a really well done story and impressively respectful writing in all aspects of like kind of what she's been given to work with so far.
Yeah.
And yes, please, more of this. Again, a really nice breath of fresh air after how we see a lot of lady wrestlers being treated in a lot of the previous media we have heretofore considered in this show.
We'll get to good.
I know we will, and I don't mean to like just make every time I talk about like women wrestlers on the show like ragging on the divas, but I'm just saying like I mean, after seeing how bad it can get, this is so nice.
It is, and I'm the one who's making you experience all the worst of it.
Yeah, but again, like that's just a byproduct of the era. Like it sucks, and I hate it. But it's satisfying to know we get to a better place. But what I do appreciate about this is like whereas in like modern WWE and AEW, lady wrestlers are treated, you know, effectively no different than dude wrestlers. They're all superstars and they're all like they just like fight in different like leagues. What I appreciate about the Sexy Star storyline is like they do make it about like her being a woman. They acknowledge like the struggles along with that, but they don't do it in any sort of patronizing way. They're able to find this really nice balance to how they write it, where it doesn't feel like, you know, r/men writing women. It feels it feels like legitimate, and it feels like she's treated with respect on this show. And I deeply appreciate that balancing act of doing both, because that's a surprisingly hard thing to do, and they accomplish it and make it look easy as hell to do writing like that, and it's great. God, I just want to point out like the difference in tone of me speaking like this episode versus last episode. Just the emotional like disparities that this world can take me to are astounding.
Professional wrestling is a wide and varied place.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
But now is after we talked a lot about some of your favorites, such as Sexy and Mariachi Loco. Let's segue to my man.
Please, I want to hear
Pentagon Jr.
Oh,
because he also got a spotlight in this show of against Superfly, who is of course a jobber, so it's mostly there to kind of like make Pentagon look good. I mean, Superfly had his moments, and it was entertaining, but it was a very much like a, hey, you know who's important? Pentagon Jr.
I mean, they do a good job making him scary. That's impressive.
Yeah, no, he's Pentagon Jr. is really good at there's almost something methodical about it, and not in the same way that not in the same way that Cuerno's methodical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and I'm trying not to, you know, project too much here, but I like if Cuerno is kind of like this like folk intensity because he's like this hunter, he's like focused on this goal. Pentagon can almost kind of be like sadistic in his focus, and that's going to get emphasized a lot more going forward, because we haven't gotten to like Pentagon's signature thing that he picks up in this show, But Pentagon likes hurting people.
Well, you say that, and it's really interesting because I'm thinking about like the brutality of the Cuerno match, and there was something that was kind of deeply cold and emotionless about it. Like it felt like obviously there was like a bit of sadism thrown in there, but it overall felt very just kind of like this is what he has to do, and he's just doing it because that's his job, and that's. I mean, he likes his job and he likes hunting the dragon, but it's still very like calculated and cold and not like carried out of some like personal vendetta. It's just like he's the best game to hunt. But thinking about watching the Pentagon match, he reveled in that. Oh no!
Like he hits hard and he likes and he's almost a monster to have to deal with, and he's very fun and I find him very fun to watch and compelling to watch. And we're not, again, as I said, we're on the ascent here, because the first 9 episodes he doesn't really get a whole lot to do because he mostly is kind of stooging for Chavo Guerrero, which kind of, I get it, because like a little otherworld context here is that like, before Lucha Underground, in AAA, Pentagon Jr. was kind of a jobber ish. Like he was he was at the very least a low card guy. He wasn't significantly important. And I think that the first 9 episodes of this show do a lot to kind of like, he kind of fills that same spot of being like, yeah, sure, he looks cool, but he's like not important. Mm-hmm. But this show, and I don't quite know why they decided to do it, but I'm glad they do. They kind of give him a bigger spotlight, and he takes it and runs with it. And this is kind of the start of that, of him getting a major spotlight in his own way to be a star and be this kind of and this great character and star per character.
Yeah. And he takes it and runs with it, clearly.
No, he dismantles Superfly, and then he also gets to he hints at things to come. If he's like, well, Chavo was a piece of shit. Shouldn't have trusted him, but he's like, don't worry, there's one man who is willing to work with me, and leaves it as a mystery of like, who is this one dude who is willing to work with this guy?
Am I correct in guessing this is probably going to be Mil Muertes?
Do I want to give you any hints of where we go?
I mean, if you want to leave it a mystery, that's fine.
I'm going to leave it a mystery of where Pentagon's story goes.
Alrighty, I'm excited then. Oh, okay. That's going to be interesting. Ooh.
But yeah, I think this was a nice little spotlight for Pentagon Jr., and I'm very excited to see him continue to get featured more as we go on.
Yeah, no. And I also want to give a quick shout out to his costume design too. Like, I've been talking a lot about the production design in this episode. I really appreciate his costume design because, like, it's one of those costumes that feels like it could have felt overwrought to me, but it doesn't. It feels like sleek and nice to look at and not like overdone, because it's, it's vaguely like he's a, samurai shogun or whatever. He comes.
Yeah, he's got this quasi martial artist ninja costume.
Yeah.
And then also like skeleton face paint.
Yeah, but nice simple black and white color palette. Not a whole lot of like super intricate like design. Like feeling we need to like throw just like random details on there to make it feel more like legit or whatever. It's a nice design, and that's the case for just all of the. They're just nice to look at.
No, yeah, they are. There's a lot of really cool visuals to Lucha Underground. So I get Lucha Libre in general, to be honest. I think that's a big benefit of Lucha Libre, is like visually it's very fun to look at.
They embrace stylism in a way I have yet to see any other like wrestling company really do. The kind of outlandishness of some of the concepts lends itself to that. The bright colors that pop. Costumes that are sleek and don't like they're a little more costumey in what they wear than something like WWE is on the reg, but they all look sleek. They don't feel over designed. They don't feel cumbersome, or the parts that are cumbersome they take off to fight, and everything looks like it has a nice kind of like production value to it. Nothing feels cheap, nothing feels forced. This is a show that just like from top to bottom feels like it's had so much love and care put into its production, and it shows. It so shows, and I love it. I love watching every second of this show, and God, I wish it were still on air, because dang, it's so nice. It's so good and entertaining and fun without me ever feeling dragged into that like dark recess of my mind. It's like, well, this is dumb. Well, this is problematic. Oh, shit. What are we doing here? Guys, no, it never goes there. It's surprising. It's nice to look at. It's thoughtful. It's everything I could want in a show like this. And I will say that until I'm blue in the face with every freaking Lucha episode we do.
Yeah, no, as I say this every time we do this, but Lucha Underground is my favorite wrestling thing that I've seen, and it shows it every time we come back to this.
It's up there for me. I'm still not sure if AEW beats it out for me, but Lucha is like, at the very least, Lucha's the one that feels the simply most nice, just nice and easy. Everything about it is easy to process while still being layered and thoughtful in what it presents.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get to sit back and watch just 45 minutes of straight up fighting, with a little bit of soap opera drama, and it's great and it's fun. It is uncompromisingly fun.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I want to bring up kind of the most like what the fuck moment of the whole week of these episodes, which we managed. We didn't talk a whole lot about Ray Phoenix and Prince Puma, just because because there's not a whole lot narratively to say about it besides it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it ends is absolutely insane.
This is great.
Okay, so. What Phoenix has Prince Puma kind of like sitting on the top rope, kind of like winded, I guess would be the best word for it. And so Phoenix runs over to the other end of the ring and jumps on the top rope, and his crazy ass decides he's going to run across the top rope. And you understand that's very difficult to do. That in itself is nuts. But Prince Puma, he gets up, he jumps on the top rope himself, and then kicks Phoenix in the face off of the top rope. While he's on the rope himself. It's absolutely insane. And me describing it doesn't do justice to how I watched it and I was like, what the fuck did he just do?
And it happens so quickly too. It kind of takes you a second to realize what all just transpired, but you're just like, okay.
Yeah, and then that allows him to do the 450 and win.
Yeah.
But it was like, whoa, man.
And they make it look so effortless. They're all so damn talented. Oh, this is so good.
Why should I be surprised? And I talked up, Ray Phoenix is the most physically gifted human being I feel like on the show, and Puma's up there. And I'm like, why should I be surprised by the things they pull off?
Yeah, no. But like, I mean, everybody on this show is some level of insanely gifted in the physical feats they can perform. And they do a really good job of flexing it too. Again, just fun. God, this is fun.
Yep. Very fun indeed. So next time, I think will also be fun as we return to the Attitude Era, as we are turning forward the clock into 1998, and so and if you look at kind of the big moments for what made WWE popular in the late 80s is when they were able to get celebrity involvement. Cyndi Lauper, Mr. T, really big stars of their day. And 1998 is when they hook up with someone of an equal caliber. In 1998, Mike Tyson was currently suspended from boxing after biting a man's ear off. Right. So WWE is like, well, what if we got Mike Tyson on our show? And so we're going to watch January 18th, 1998, where Mike Tyson is here, and he gets face-to-face with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay, that does sound interesting. Okay, I'm here for it.
So that will be next time. But David, hit the plugs.
Yes, sir. Alrighty, my friends. Thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. As always, delighted to have you join us on this wild, wacky adventure. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are so glad you decided to pop in with us, and hope you continue to do so. If you would like to continue to do so, there are a number of ways in which you can follow us to keep hearing our content on a regular basis. One, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, the Noobs and Knockouts Podcast. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google,
and YouTube as well.
And YouTube as well. Yeah. Follow us on the podcast platforms. Leave likes, leave comments. Leave reviews on the podcast platforms. Again, all these little things they really help boost our engagement. And hey, if you enjoy the show, if you want, you can make it a nice little comment, nice little review. That 5 stars. Ooh, we love that stuff. Oh, we were eternally grateful.
Engagement.
Yeah, exactly. So many great buzzwords. If you'd like to follow us on socials, you can currently find us on Twitter at Noobs and Knox Pod. That's at Noobs, the letter N, Knox Pod. You can also email us at Noobs and Knockouts Pod at gmail.com. If you'd like to, pop in, say hi, ask questions, recommend episodes, just compliment our lovely faces that you can definitely see when you listen to this podcast. Anything like that, we just love to hear from you. And finally, we have a Patreon where you can currently subscribe to a $1 tier, help us make a little bit money off this little venture of ours. And in return, you get shout outs at the end of episodes and early access to episodes.
Yes,
and I'm sure more tiers and more rewards to come. But as always, thank you all so much for tuning in with us. We are the Noobs and Knockouts podcast, and you all have a fantastic rest of your day.
Yep. Thanks for watching.
Hasta luego.